Hello and welcome to the Supernatural track here at Continual. I'm your host, Gail Martin, and tonight we are looking at some more of our favorite episodes. In fact, this is number 12. We have a lot of favorite episodes, but there are a lot of great episodes to choose from. So before we launch into that, let's let our wonderful panelists introduce themselves, starting with Elektra.
I'm Elektra Hammond. I'm a writer and an editor, and I started watching Supernatural from that very first episode when it aired, and I was watching it until that very last episode when it made me cry.
Carole?
I'm Carole Stokes. I started watching Supernatural in season 3, started writing fanfic under Fire Sign 10 in 2012. And as Ellis Colton, I am an MM romance writer. I'm also one of the co-hosts of the podcast Supernatural, The Lore of Supernatural Fanfiction on Spotify.
Okay. Lynn.
Hi, I'm Dr. Lynn Zubernis. I'm a licensed psychologist and a professor at Westchester University. Also been a fan of Supernatural from the beginning and also a writer. I've written a bunch of books on Supernatural, including 2 written with the cast and the fans of the show who all wrote their own chapters about why it's so special, which is what we're going to talk about tonight.
All right. And I'm Gail Martin and Morgan Bryce. As Gail, I write epic and urban fantasy. As Morgan, I write urban fantasy, male paranormal romance. But all my modern day worlds are ones Sam and Dean could walk right into and feel right at home. That noise in the background is my dog having a very good time on the chew toy that keeps him from jumping on me. I fell in love with Supernatural in 2016, dove down the rabbit hole. That was halfway through season 11. Watched all 11 seasons in 4 months for the start of season 12, and haven't come up for air ever since. So we have talked about a lot of favorite episodes, but there are still more out there. So Elektra, start us off.
Well, we haven't given enough love, I think, to season 15. So I'm going to start off with Atomic Monsters. This is the 4th episode of season 15. And it's sort of a monster of the week. There's this lovely little family, and they are an absolutely, mom, dad, son, he's a football player. They're talking about getting him into college, and they're super focused on that. And Sam and Dean come into town because, there's a body's been found with no blood, and another girl has disappeared. And as it turns out, this absolutely perfect family has been, kidnapping girls so that their son can, suck them dry because he accidentally became a vampire. And it's just such they find the girl has been kidnapped, and it leads to this family, and they think it's dad. And it turns out, no, it's the kid, and they're all in on it. It's Agatha Christie-ish. It's just so weird. The kid's a lacrosse player, and they're there. And meanwhile, there's a whole B plot going on where Chuck is depressed and trying to find his muse, and he finds Becky, and Becky says, well, what makes you happy? And he says, writing, creating. And she's, well, you should do that. And he starts writing, and he asks her to critique things, and she's very hesitant, and she's saying, well, it's okay, but the villain really isn't villainy enough. And eventually he starts to make things really bad. And in between, he kind of zaps her husband and zaps her kids and zaps her, and starts making things really, really nasty for our heroes. Because, Chuck, not a nice guy, or God, or something. It's on the one hand just like a cute little monster of the week, and on the other hand, we're reminded that God is not a nice guy.
Yep. Okay, Carole?
All right. Go big or go home. Episode 1520. Carry On, the finale, the series finale. And everybody can weigh in on this because I know we all have thoughts and feelings on this. I love this episode. I love everything about it. I love slice of life Sam and Dean living in the bunker, making breakfast and doing laundry. Dean's simple joy in attending the pie festival, Sam's simple joy in sticking pie in Dean's face. So we just had this lovely, lighthearted beginning. They go on a case. It has kids. So, they got to do it because it has kids, and you know how they are. They've got to save the kids. And, of course, Dean is impaled, and then we have the whole second half, which first time out, I sobbed all the way through, where we have the dual stories of Sam's life as he continues on the mortal plane, and Dean's life as he is in heaven and assimilating his new environment there. And so as Dean races around the beautiful curves of, British Canada, which were quite British stunning. Canada. I mean, the scenery is just absolutely stunning. Sam gets to have a child and raise him, but we see clearly that he is in fact carrying on, but he inside carries this wellspring of grief that his brother is gone. And Dean, albeit in heaven with baby, and there's going to be, all this great stuff going on, is still looking for Sam. And until, of course, Bobby says he'll be along. And culminating in the exquisite moment on the bridge where, as Dean surveys the river canyon, doesn't even have to look around to know that Sam's standing behind him, and says, "Hey, Sammy," before he even turns to see him. And yes, there's Sam smiling. And it's just, as I said, exquisite. So beautiful episode, beautifully crafted, takes us through this entire range of emotions, from humor and the pleasure of seeing them enjoy their lives in a non-fighting interlude, to the depths of heartbreak, to the joy of their ultimate unification. So there you go. Thoughts, questions, comments?
And I love the point of trivia that they did their best to dress both of them in outfits as close to the pilot as possible. I guess after 15 years, they couldn't find Sammy's jacket, or since Jared filled out in those years.
Yeah. Even if they had it, would he have fit? Because he's still
22-year-old Jared versus
because he grew a couple of more inches in those first couple of years, and then we're not even talking about, and I'm not even talking about filling out like he was in season 5 when he was like, auditioning for like G.I. Joe and stuff, but just
shoulders.
He was moosier by
Jinkies, those shoulders.
Yeah, moosier. But yes, they did their best to match them. So Lynn?
I mean, I agree on Carry On. I absolutely love Carry On. I love the way it brings things full circle. I love the way it shows the growth and the evolution and the brothers and their relationship, and Dean being able to let Sam go and Sam being able to let Dean go, but them still sort of waiting to be reunited. So for me, Carry On works perfectly as the finale, and having the bridge scene at the end, in my mind, that makes it a happily ever after ending. So I'm still shocked that we got a happy ending at the end of Supernatural. It's really not what you would expect from a show that is really a pretty dark show. I don't think if you were watching the show from the beginning, you expected a happy ending. So I feel like that ending was a real gift in that it left us happy. But I'm going to give some love to the episode right before it, 1519, Inherit the Earth. Because while I love Carry On and Carol loves Carry On and a lot of people love Carry On, surprise, a lot of people love Carry On. There are some people who it was like too much for them. I mean, I have some very close friends who the tragic part of 1520 was just so unbearable for them that they can't even really think of it as the ending because somehow they can't get through the barn to get to the bridge, so they don't feel the same about it. So for them, I think it's really interesting, and I would love to ask someone at some point whether this was purposeful because I almost feel like it was a three-part ending to Supernatural. There was 18, which was Castiel's ending. There was 19, which was like the stereotypical happy ending. That was the only kind of ending that some people felt like they could emotionally handle. And then there was 1520, which to me seemed like the most authentic to Supernatural ending, but also was really hard to watch. So 1519, it has a beautiful score. You know, the whole series alternated between Chris Leonard's and Jay Gruska doing the music, and they're both geniuses. So Chris Leonard's did 19, Jay Gruska did 20. So the score is beautiful, the music is beautiful, the cinematography is beautiful. And it's also got its own kind of little evolution. In the beginning of the episode, Sam and Dean are pretty hopeless. Like Chuck has taken everything away. They're in an apocalyptic, abandoned Earth. Animals are gone, people are gone, people they love are gone, everything's gone, and they're sort of defeated. And at one point they say, you know, okay, you win. Dean says, I'll kill Sam. Sam will kill me. We'll kill each other. You'll get what you want. And by that point, Chuck is just so sadistic that he says, no, I'd rather leave you with feeling guilty that everything has been destroyed because of you. So, you know, they're really, really down at the beginning. But then, as is the theme of the entire show, they manage to pick themselves up again. They manage to always keep fighting. We get smart Winchesters. You know, they bring Michael back in and Lucifer's back. Like there's all this sort of limited because it was so no, we're not supposed to talk about that. But anyway, it was limited in who they could give back, but they had a couple people back, and they end up culminating in a brutal fight with Chuck. But because they're smart and because they're tenacious, they win. So for some people, it's the episode that they really needed because they needed to see the Winchesters win. And I love that in the end, we get to see Sam and Dean in the bunker together, you know, sharing a beer. And they say, you know, we get to write our own story. Now we get to be finally free, and it's just you and me going wherever the story takes us. That is a beautiful ending, and it ends with how all the original early episodes of Supernatural ended with Sam and Dean driving off in the Impala. And there's even a nice sort of, just as at the end of Carry On, there's a little moment there where it's Sam and Dean. But to anybody who knows Sam and Dean and knows Jared and Jensen, or, you know, not knows them, but is familiar with them and the way they interact and their mannerisms, there's a moment where Jared and Jensen are there instead of Sam and Dean. And it's the two of them kind of reassuring each other, glancing into the camera, which is looking at their crew. It's so beloved. So it feels like kind of a tying together the ends, both for characters and for the actors. So I really like Inherit the Earth also.
I had that.
Go ahead.
Well, I had that on my list as well, because yes, I loved the culmination of the whole battle with Chuck and all of that, and them being free. And I remember watching it live and thinking that was so complete. Like, what are they going to do for one more episode? Like, you wrapped everything up there. Where are you going to go now? You know, of course, not realizing what they had in store for us, but it was so, you know, them going through all of that and then riding off literally into the sunset, that I really was like, that was a great ending. They should just end it there. I'm glad they didn't. But.
And I love that it's not defined how much time goes between 19 and 20. I think the boys have said that it was not just they went out the next week and Dean got killed, that there was a passage of time. And if I'm remembering correctly, Jared may have said he thought in his mind it was several years, 5 years, I've heard. And to me, that leaves the door open for those, for them to reprise the series, maybe to come back and deal with those years. And they wouldn't be too far off in age because it was just a couple of years ago, and they could come back and do anything they wanted with that period between 19 and 20. So my little fangirl heart is holding on to that. But yes, both fingers, except I'm holding a dog. But I'm going to say Drag Me Away From You. This is another season 15 episode, and it's the last time we get to flash back to the Winchesters. And we get to see Sam and Dean left alone in this motel, and John's off doing what John does, and there's a problem. And it also raises the question of whether or not, because of the timing of how John shows up in the end to save them, was he using them as bait? Was he really gone? Was he hanging around? He gets there awfully fast in the nick of time, which suggests he was never really that far away. John Winchester's A+ parenting. But anytime we get to see young Dean and young Sam being smart kids, knowing what they know, but limited by what they can do as kids, and dealing with a real threat. And I just loved seeing the interaction between the young brothers, seeing how they interact with the brother and sister who are at the motel, who are being menaced by what we find out is a Shriga. And then Sam gets nearly killed by the Shriga, and Dean blames himself because he didn't see it coming. He didn't prevent it. He was just a kid himself. And of course, John shows up and blows everything away. But I love getting to see that glimpse of them growing up and that insight into a little more of what made them the Sam and Dean that we got to know as older adults. So back to you, Elektra.
I wanted to make one comment on the, I'm losing things, on Carry On.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just that I liked it, don't get me wrong, but I still do mourn for the episode that wasn't, that we lost because of COVID. And, you know, seeing Kansas in heaven in the bar that never was, the roadhouse that we did not get, and all of their friends that were gone reappearing once again. I dream of that sometimes and wish that we had gotten it. You know, it would have been wonderful. I'm going to go to season 5 to 2 Minutes to Midnight. This is the episode where we got the wonderful, wonderful presentation of Pestilence, who was just, I mean, so disturbing. I mean, I didn't like watching it even. It was so distressing to see him just kind of coming by and making people practically fall apart with sickness. You know, Cass is trying to find his way back to them because he's human again in season 5. And they're trying to find Pestilence because they're gathering up the rings for the end of season 5 and the distressing finale. And Sam and Dean head for Pestilence. They find him. They get sick, and they manage to grab the ring and not die. And they, towards the end of the episode, they do find Death, and they make a deal with him to borrow his ring. And he even tells them how to use it. And they're headed towards the end of season 5, where they're going to be able to open the cage, which is not the best thing in the world, but at least they know how. It's too bad the Four Horsemen never turn up again, although we do get Death quite a bit, and Death is awesome.
Death is awesome. And then you see him at a supernatural convention. And the first time I saw him, he came out on stage skipping. Yeah. And it was just, the actor is so not the character, and your little brain is going, "Ooh, I think I'm on fire. I think I'm on fire. Something is not."
He sang at a karaoke, and yes. It was some kind of song about like bluebells or something, the bluebells of happiness or something, and I was like, "What?"
Does he actually like fried food, or was that just the character?
I don't know,
because that seems so weird, the whole fried food thing.
Yeah, it almost seems like it was written in as an in. Yeah.
He is a food aficionado, so it's entirely. I know he said that he's British. I know he said he likes chips very much, so maybe that was a little nod to Julian.
He seems so lovely.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, and there's another season of the Umbrella Academy coming, so we may be getting more of him there.
Awesome.
I'm going to go to a more lighthearted episode after all of this great drama and everything. The Purge. Season 8, episode 13. The Purge is Monster of the Week. But it's just full of some great moments. First of all, we get the Pish Tacos, which is just a really funny name, and so we get to make fun of that a lot. Sam and Dean are undercover in a spa for people who would like to reduce themselves, and Sam is enchantingly clad as a yoga instructor in a workout tank top and shorts, and then he's even in a tracksuit with fitted legs, which, as anybody who's seen him in Walker knows, when he wears something fitted, his legs are a mile long. So he just looks edible in that episode. Dean is relegated to doing scut work in the kitchen, but also and has to wear a hairnet. But also discovers the part of the secret where the sweet potato pudding that's supposed to be the big treat is actually drugged, so that the Pish Tacos can feed upon the fat people's fat. And so Dean is like lying on a sack of potatoes going, mumbling incoherently and trying to tell Sam what's going on. And they meet Donna. We see Donna again. I think this is only the second time now we see her. Or is it the first? Yeah, the second time. So we met her in Hibbing, but now she has come here because she wants to lose a little weight. And she's delightful, and they're delightful with her. They always have such great chemistry with Donna. Anytime they're interacting, Sam and Dean and Donna, it's gold. So it's just a fun Monster of the Week. The Pish Tacos aren't even really being bad. The whole point is that they're just harvesting enough fat to make the people who want to lose weight happy, and they're okay. But then one of them has like gone rogue, and so they have to put him down, and so it's just a really fun little romp. One of those episodes that just gives us a great little break from all the darkness and the drama, and lets us see the boys have a good time. Sam is bendy. Gail, you're frozen.
Gail is frozen. Sam is bendy and Gail is frozen.
Well, Sam being bendy would make me freeze too if I had to see it.
No, Gail's back.
Can you hear me now? I was going to say, if you sign up for cupping when you go to a massage, it actually uses these round things, and it's supposed to do things for you, but it
looks just like the Pish Taco.
It's like, I saw that episode. I know what you really are.
I wonder if somebody even saw that and thought, oh, that would be a really good monster device or something.
Yeah.
Let's make up something that uses that.
Yeah.
Lynn?
I love the scene in that one with Donna and Dean and the donut eating. That's just classic. And Brianna has told the story of this. That was her first episode, and she has told the story of like wanting so badly to like make a good impression and make it funny and not crack. And Jensen was doing everything he possibly could to eat that donut in the most ridiculous way to make her crack. And she never cracked. And after that, he was like, respect. Like that was it. She earned their respect right off the bat.
So that was her first episode.
That was her first, yeah.
And then it's later in Hibbing that they meet her and they're like, oh, and she's like, oh, agent, so-and-so. And they're like, oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, the donut scene is hilarious.
They liked her so much in that episode that she ended up coming back, which is awesome. I'm going to also go more lighthearted. This is a controversial episode, but it's actually one of my personal favorites, Fan Fiction, season 10, the 5th episode of season 10, which happens to be the 200th episode of Supernatural. So it's very unusual. I think it's a polarizing episode. People either really love it or really hate it. I don't think there's a lot of people who are like, whatever. It's very different from most of the episodes. It's the only true musical episode, despite there's no singing in Supernatural, according to Dean. There is a lot of singing in this episode. It has incredible music by Gruska and Leonards. I actually really love some of the songs. Like, they're so good that they're songs that you want to play repeatedly. A Single Man Tear is just fabulous. And I think their version of Carry On is really hauntingly beautiful. It's the first time we heard it done in a very, slowed down and in a more emotional way. There's a great scene where Sam and Dean walk into the school auditorium for the first time and hear them performing that version of Carry On. And the cast, the director and crew set it up so that Jensen and Jared didn't know what was going to happen when they walked in, so that they could have kind of an authentic emotional reaction when they walked in. And they did have a really emotional reaction. They both kind of teared up, they said. So I love that they did that. I like it because it's a meta episode, which I tend to really like the meta episodes. There's all kinds of little inside information call outs. Sam and Dean are in motel room 200 because it's the 200th episode, and they call things by the names that they're called in the fandom, which is a Robbie Thompson touch that I really enjoyed it. I mean, I only like meta when it's done in an affectionate, respectful way. But I feel like in this episode, it was done that way. When somebody asked, where's this amulet? As a fan watching, I was like, oh my God, that's what we call it in the fandom, sort of not expecting that to make its way into canon. But it was, again, a respectful, affectionate call out. So I really liked all of those. And I also really like the kind of the underlying message of the episode is a message that I think is so relevant today for fandom, all fandoms, which is that, there's canon, which is what canon is, but then everybody has their own interpretation, and that people's different interpretations are valid. Sam and Dean start out, especially Dean, with being really critical and saying that's not, Marie's version of Supernatural. That's not Supernatural. This is all completely wrong. And then by the end, Dean gives this great sort of speech and says, I get it now. This is Marie's Supernatural, and I want you to stand as close as she wants you to, speaking to the people playing Sam and Dean. And I want you to put as much sub into that text as you can, speaking to the actresses who are involved in real life who play Dean and Cass. And then a little kick it in the ass reference to Kim Manners. So it gives an affectionate shout out to both of the really big ships in the fandom. And I think both of them were legitimately affectionate, both to Wincest and to Destiel. And it has Dean sort of validating that everybody's interpretation is a valid interpretation. So I love that. I love the ending when it goes back to actual Sam and Dean, and they're listening to the actresses who are playing Sam and Dean. and saying, you know what? That's how I feel too. I want to get back on the road. It's just the two of us against the world. Dean takes the little fake Samulet, hangs it on the mirror. Chuck appears at the end before he was a bad guy as the publisher, but that's the first time Rob Benedict returns as Chuck in a long time. So for me, it's a real feel good episode that I can watch again and again. So I like it.
Well, and I love that moment when you can see Sam and Dean registering Carry On as being an analogy to their journey and their life. And just having it hit that, oh, I can see where this kind of sounds like it's about us. And they just played that so well. Well, I'm going to go with Last Call. So this is Dean and his old buddy, who's played by Christian Kane. Never a bad reason to have Christian Kane show up in something. And you find out that in the years after Sam left for Stanford, Dean continued hunting with John, sometimes with him, sometimes without him. And they knew this guy, they knew his bar. He and Dean were close to the same age, so they did some hunts together. And Dean's looking for this monster. And lo and behold, his old buddy turns out to have the monster tied up in the basement, and he's using the monster for his own ends. But before Dean has to kill him, and he even looks at Dean and says, "You're going to have to kill me, aren't you?" And Dean says, "Yeah, I'm sorry." You get this moment with Dean and Christian Kane's character on stage at this Roadhouse bar, and they're singing the theme to Dukes of Hazzard, which they had just fondly remembered John putting in a tape deck as they were driving. And so that made the whole episode for me. I mean, just loving that one. And so that's my round here. Back to you, Elektra.
Okay. The hero's journey. We're back in episode 15, and they've discovered that nothing works. They try to boil water to make pasta, and they trip and it goes all over the floor. They run their credit card that Charlie gave them that always works, and it doesn't work. They get traffic tickets, parking tickets, when they never get parking tickets. Nothing is working. Meanwhile, Garth has called them because he needs help. They show up at Garth's, and Sam has a cold, and Dean's mouth hurts. And Garth looks at his mouth, and all of his teeth have cavities, because Garth is, of course, a dentist. Garth's wife, Beth, her brother is in trouble. They check it out, and he's involved in some sort of monster cage fighting thing, which gets live streamed onto the internet. And they go to try and check it out, and they get captured, and they're in serious trouble because, of course, nothing is working right. God has taken away that little bit of luck that he gave them that made everything work out for them, that they could break into locks just a little bit faster than everybody else. They never tripped when it would have gotten them into trouble. They were always just a little bit lucky. And now they're going to die in a cage fighting match against monsters, and the whole internet is going to watch. Garth saves them. Thank goodness for Garth. He's always been clever. And at the end of the episode, they hop into the Impala, which of course isn't running so good because they're just not that lucky. And they're going to drive up to Alaska to try their luck because they heard rumors of a place where if you do things right, you might be able to change their luck.
Okay.
If they can get the Impala all the way across Canada to Alaska, that is one damn long drive if your car's running a little funky.
This is true. Carole? Oh, can't hear you. Muted.
So much for that intro. I'm going back to the past to season 4. And one of their only other episodes, they only had a few episodes where the monsters were humans, of course, the Benders, which we've discussed before. And also this one now, episode 11 in season 4, All That Remains. They're out to keep this family from moving into what seems to be some kind of spooky farmhouse. And indeed, spooky, mysterious, and yucky things are happening. But in the end, it is not a monster. It is a girl who's an unfortunate product of unfortunate family relations, I believe. And she's living in the walls of the house. And wasn't there a brother too? Didn't her brother live with her too for a while or something? And they're like catching animals and eating them. And they're not even really being like malicious on purpose. They're feral. They're feral and they're trying to survive. And they don't understand why these people are coming in and what's happening. And they're fighting back the only way they know how, which is unfortunate and yucky. And the family is already kind of going through this culture shock because they're a city family now in the middle of the farmlands of Nebraska. So they're like, what the heck are we doing here anyway? And there's no internet and there's no Wi-Fi and stuff. And then they have to deal with this incredibly weird situation. So I think it's one of the episodes that a lot of people are not terribly fond of. And when we think of the human monsters, we do all go to the Benders. But I liked this because it was an unusual story. The resilience of the family as they eventually bonded over the fact that they had this situation to deal with. And Sam and Dean just working hard to help them survive and then, actually surpass their situation. And I just enjoyed it for that. There was no monster of the week, unless you count the feral child as a monster of the week. And, sometimes we needed to be reminded that there are human monsters, that it's not all just the supernatural stuff. There's a lot of human yucky stuff out there as well.
Okay.
So
Lynn?
I'm going to go all the way back to season 1. We've talked about most of the episodes in season 1 because I think season 1 is incredible and there's not a bad episode in the entire season 1, I don't think. But we haven't talked about Asylum, which if I had to pick like my favorite episodes of season 1, it wouldn't be one of my favorites, but it is a really, really good episode. It's super scary. It takes place in an old abandoned asylum, which what is scarier than that? It's beautifully filmed. Most of it takes place lit by flashlights, which season 1, Sam and Dean are just ethereally beautiful, and even more so perhaps by flashlight. And so there's a lot of beautiful flashlit close-ups. It was the first episode directed by Guy B, who did a lot of the early episodes, so it's really well directed. Jerry Wannock's set deck is incredible. If you look at it slowly, or if you go through and look at screen caps from the episode, there's all these little details that make the asylum incredibly scary. Like there's just randomly like a dismembered doll like laying on a table, and these old bathtubs that look like they did shock treatment in. It's very, very scary, and it's very tense throughout the entire episode. And the tension in going through this dimly lit asylum and looking for whatever is terrorizing people, that tension is kind of a reflection of the tension that's there between Sam and Dean. Because in the 10th episode of the series, we didn't really know them that well. Like we were still getting to know them. They were still getting to know each other again after having been separated. And they really weren't on the same page for most of season 1. And at this point, Sam is very angry and resentful that their father has just kind of disappeared into the wild blue yonder, but he still sends them coordinates for them to go work a job. So he's really angry about that. Dean is still very much being Dad's little good soldier and saying, well, if he's sending us coordinates, then this is what he wants us to do. This is what we're going to do. So they're kind of at each other's throats, but it's all beneath the surface until now, until this episode. Dean is still trying to kind of lighten the mood. He's trying to make jokes. His jokes are like falling flat. Sam's just not going for it. Dean is kind of hurt, I think, by Sam not going with it and kind of refusing to be cheered up. But neither of them are wrong. I mean, Sam is right too, that John is kind of illustrating that not A plus parenting. He is kind of jerking them around. So you can see both of their point of view. And Dean is a lot more insecure than Sam. He's worried that Sam is going to give up and just leave again anyway. So he really wants to pull Sam into these jobs that they get to do. Inside the episode, Sam goes to see an actual present day shrink, and that shrink asks him the question, which is really what the episode is all about. This brother you're road tripping with, how do you really feel about him? And that's what we're wondering too. We get to see some of how maybe Sam feels in a disinhibited sense when the very scary, creepy Dr. Ellicott ghost attacks Sam and kind of possesses him. And then Sam, in turn, attacks Dean. He shoots him with a salt gun, and while Dean is down, he says some pretty hurtful things to him. You know, he says, for once in your life, shut your mouth. He calls Dean pathetic. Dean, I think, is actually really, really hurt by this. He gives Sam his gun instead of the salt gun and says, here, I'll make it easier for you. Do it for real. And I remember watching it for the first time live when I had no idea what was going to happen and thinking, well, I don't care how possessed Sam is. There's no way he's going to pull the trigger. I was absolutely certain of it. And then Sam pulled the trigger. I remember like screaming out loud because I couldn't believe he did that. Of course, smart Dean, because he was always smart in season one, they both were, had taken the bullets out, so nothing happened to him. But, you know, he says, you hate me that much, you could kill your own brother. And it really hurt me to know that Sam could do that. But it also gave us, in this episode, a lot of insight into this tension that's bubbling beneath the surface for the two of them. So I really liked it.
And the atmosphere is just so chilling, you know, with the lights and everything kind of has that greenish tint to it. And, you know, there's like abandoned medical stuff all over the place. And they find out the horrific experiments he was doing. And it's just really then culminates in that showdown between them. But the buildup is like awesome.
Yeah, it's true horror too. I think often
pure horror.
People who were watching from the beginning, like from season one, like I did, categorized the show as a horror show. It was real, and I never lost that categorization, which was why I wasn't shocked by not having a 19 as the happy ending, because it really, in my mind, it is a horror show.
Well, I'm sticking with the Gamblers. Now, that's the one right after the episode that we talked about where the boys lose their extra luck. And, you know, certainly Sam and Dean had to be good at what they do. They grew up doing this. John taught them to do it. Bobby taught them to do it. So they weren't completely without skills. But we realize, as Elektra said, that Chuck had given them a little something extra, which explains why they didn't get flat tires or traffic tickets or some of the other things that should have really come their way more often than usual. And so this is what happens when they drive to Alaska to get their luck back. And they go to this kind of legendary bar where if you can beat the odds, you can get your luck back. And it comes down to they meet these other people who have lost everything. And they're afraid to leave the bar, because if they leave, they're just going to get creamed because they are completely out of luck. So they keep staying and they keep trying to play, and they don't get their luck back, but they've been there for a while. And it's Sam who takes on Fortuna to play pool, even though we think of Dean as being the pool shark all these years. And despite everything, because she's a god, Sam loses. And she is still, and the last game he plays her for is not just for him and Dean. He wants all of their luck. He wants to free all of the people who have been stuck here. And that's what ends up making the difference, is even though he loses to her, she lets them all go free and takes the curse away from them. And she says, it's been a long time since she's seen their type. And Sam says, what do you mean? Heroes. And that was just such a nice end cap to what we had seen before with Chuck and his vindictiveness. And here they get their luck back. And it was such a classic playing for their fates episode. And so I really loved that. Well, we have gone through an awful lot of episodes. We still have another session coming up where we're going to hit a few more on the way out, but we are out of time for tonight. So before we wrap up, let's give everyone a chance to say where we can see you online. Elektra?
Elektra Hammond, you could find me at untilmidnight.com. I do most of my social media on Mastodon, where I'm Elektra at wandering.shop. Sorry. And I've got a new story out, and you can find it in ZNB Presents Volume 2, and it's called Apart From That, Mrs. Lincoln.
All right.
Leave that to you.
Carole?
You can find me on Facebook, particularly in the Supernatural TFWNC group that Gail runs, and Continual, and on many, 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 many Continual panels. You can, as Ellis Colton, you can find my books on Amazon, and all of my social media links under that name are at elliscolton.card.co. So it's CARRD.co, and that has all my links: Amazon, Smashwords, Goodreads, Facebook group, all that stuff is there.
Okay, Lynn.
Find me on all social media at Fangasm SPN. You can find my books, including Family Don't End with Blood and There'll Be Peace When You Are Done, which are written with the supernatural actors, on Amazon, or links to those books and my new book on The Boys on my website at fangasmthebook.com.
Okay. And I'm pretty easy to find at gailzmartin.com or morganbryce.com. If you spell those right, you'll find me on almost all the major social medias. And but most of I do run the Supernatural TFWNC group on Facebook. But most of the time you can find me here on Continual. So thank you so much for being fantastic panelists. And thanks to all of you for watching and listening. There will be more Supernatural coming up soon on Continual. So we'll see you online.